Hello, 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 and welcome to episode number 71 of the Teen Talk Screen podcast. My name is Vango, and I hope you guys are all doing very, very well as I talk to you and record on this Friday evening. It has officially been one whole week of summer for me. I am done with school. Summertime is here, and honestly, I have been so lazy this week. I've literally been the world's laziest person this week. I have not done a single thing to advance my sad life in which I am constantly in denial and in a midlife crisis. But you know what? Next week I will actually lock in. Like I promise, like I have a goal and everything. I have goals for this summer. I'm gonna actually do said goals this summer. I'm gonna wake up early, said no one ever. I'm actually gonna try to do that. Like actually gonna yeah. I'm kinda convinced I'm half sick. If I sound like I'm sick, it's probably because I might be. My voice kinda sucks right now. My nose has been really stuffy. It's literally June and my nose is stuffy. Like, what the heck is going on? But I hope everything is going well with you guys. I hope you guys are not suffering with health problems. I hope you guys are doing very productive. If you're done with school, good for you. If you're not, that's okay. You got a little bit more probably. If you're working, then sorry, you just gotta work. You gotta make money. You gotta pay those bills. Gotta get food on the table. Don't we all? I need a job desperately, but I probably should not be complaining about that when I kind of treat this like my part-time job anyway, except I'm not really getting paid for it. But like I just like the payment is my like ranting and getting all my emotions out. But yeah, anyway, yeah, very eventful week. Definitely for me. But yeah, I guess I should get onto our program of the week before I start ranting too much. So yeah, time for our big old good old awesome amazing program of the week. Let's hear the theme song. Let's get it. Okay, so this is a program I really, really do enjoy. I feel like I've been rewatching a lot recently, probably because I've been really bored and there's no more new figures watch. I've been rewatching quite a lot. I've been rewatching a lot of 2020 to 2021 season, like the COVID era, which is kind of crazy because coronavirus is 5 years ago, and that really does kind of creep me out because I'm like, coronavirus is 5 years ago. That really does creep me out because I'm like, it really was 5 years ago. Anyway, one of those programs from the era that I really did like was Ivan Chutmaratko from Ukraine and his 2020 free skate at the Budapest Trophy. I even added a music section because you guys know I keep on forgetting to add, like, mention what music these skaters are singing to. In this free skate, Ivan Chutmaratko is skating to the song Cornerstone by Benjamin Clementine, who I feel like is a very well known name because we've seen a lot of programs to Benjamin Clementine recently, notably Nathan Chen and Miura and Kihara, for example. But I would say that this is kind of one of those programs where I feel like, okay, in general, I feel like contemporary programs are not my favorite thing because I often feel that contemporary programs get very much overdone to the point where like contemporary is like synonymous with like silly and like a little interesting looking for me. But this is a contemporary program that's done so subtly, and it's done so well that it is a very well executed contemporary program without being so overbearing or like over the top or extravagant. I don't know what the exact theme of this program is. To me, I think Ivan Shimarako moves like there is a butterfly fluttering through his body, if that makes sense. I think that's kind of the vibe of this program. In the beginning of the program, he's kind of leaning over. One arm kind of flutters and then it transfers to the other arm, and then he kind of like shuffles back and forth on his skates. It's like one of my favorite choreographic moments probably ever. And just throughout this program, this like recurring theme of like a butterfly kind of comes up. His arms are kind of flapping around everywhere. That's how I get kind of feel. I don't know the exact vibe of this, but it gives butterfly vibes, and I really do enjoy it. Another thing is that I feel like single skaters sometimes one of my gripes sometimes is not using the choreo sequence and the step sequence to like their full choreographic capabilities, like doing it technically but not selling it choreographically. But Ivan Shimarako definitely sells it choreographically for me. He's such a good choreographic skater, especially in the step sequence using full use of the arms, nice like twizzling movements going on as you use the arms. The choreo sequence is beautiful. He does this movement where he kind of does kind of a spread eagle and then he kind of goes into a knee slide, and he does a very, very smooth knee slide on ice. It just transitions from the spread eagle to the knee slide so easily. And then he does another move where he does a cool knee slide that's a little bit longer and then goes straight into his camel spin as he stands up. I mean, that is a very obviously very difficult to go from one knee onto one blade, or from the two knees to one blade. But again, just very excellently done with the choreography. Kind of those moments, yeah, they're not super obvious. They're not getting scored like jumps or spins or anything, but these kind of choreographic moments that really added to the program. Even in the very end, between the last two spins, there is a choreographing moment between those last two spins that kind of just like letting all that fluttery butterflyness go, I guess. And it's just, it feels very nice. It feels very thoughtful of a program, and it's a very effective contemporary program. So definitely go check it out. Ivan Shimarako, his free skate at the 2020 Budapest Trophy. Beautiful skater, beautiful music, beautiful choreography. Definitely go check it out. And that is time for our main episode. Okay, guys, so for our main episode today, I've decided to do another one of my. This is kind of a new series. I didn't know this was gonna be a series, but I guess here we are. I've already done two episodes that are kind of similar, like to this kind of idea. And so, excuse me. And so I guess it is kind of becoming a series without it. Like, I didn't plan this out to be a series, but I guess it is now. Let me know, if you have any ideas about what to do with this series, because it is kind of an interesting concept that I just kind of came up with. But this episode is part of my occasional series on analyzing the career slash and or whatever you want to call it, the career slash and or success of very famous figure skaters. I did do an episode on Yuzuru Hanyu back in September, that went really well, and then I did a Yuta Kim episode in April, about 2-ish months ago. I feel like it was like the middle of April-ish. And I will continue these as long as, as they are seeming to be quite popular. So I'm really happy with that. Obviously, that these are really popular and people are really enjoying them. So obviously, that's what I would love like. I like that. I like to see that because it, you know, makes me not too sad. That no one watches this program. No, I'm kidding. Um, so kind of the idea of these episodes, they are a little bit so much my video essay themed episodes where but I will say instead of analyzing the sport specifically, I'm analyzing more of a skater's career. In my interpretation and what we can learn from them. From their career and from their success and how they became such a powerful, good, known, famous, etc. skater, that is still very well known and very well discussed to this day. The important thing with these episodes is that I try not to just summarize what their career was like, because you can just find that on internet anywhere. You can summarize their career kind of anywhere. You can Google it. You can ask ChatGPT to write an overview of it for you. So I'm not here just to summarize their career, but kind of analyze their career for kind of its themes and for what it can teach us and what skaters maybe now can learn from the skaters back then or the skaters from a few seasons ago, kind of about that. So yeah, again, if you're into this kind of vibe that I am kind of discussing right now, I have done already 2 episodes about Yuzuru Hanyu and Yuna Kim, but we have another very famous skater today, and today we're going very much back in time to the 80s and kind of the 90s, and we are going to go back in time and discuss the career of Katarina Witt from Germany, who is very famous, of course, for her 1988 Carmen Olympic program. Not just discussing obviously the impact of her 1988 Carmen program, but also discussing kind of the impact of her whole entire career, the parts not a lot of people talk about, maybe the parts a lot of people forget about, but also kind of the parts that we should be highlighting and the parts that we should be highlighting because they're important and because they kind of reflect the spirit and the nature of the sport, I feel like, and that are still very applicable. I was on train. I was on a train ride right there and kind of lost it. The parts that are very applicable to figure skating today. The sources today, do not blame me because I'm not okay. If you're an English teacher, stop listening right for like 2 seconds. The sources today I pulled are from Wikipedia. I know, I'm sorry. Katarina Witt and her official website, Reddit, and then background knowledge that I've kind of had just from years of being a figure skating fan, things about Katarina Witt that I've picked up here and there and everything. Anyway, so yeah, we're gonna get started with kind of a general overview of Katarina Witt. Who is she? Why is she important? If you've never heard of her, that's okay. That we're all here to learn. But Katarina Witt is an amazing figure skater and apparently an actress. Occasionally, apparently, but we love being multi-talented on this podcast, just like me. But she is a two-time Olympic champion in both 1984 in Sarajevo and 1988 in Calgary. which obviously is an achievement very few people have achieved, is becoming a two-time Olympic champion. Off the top of my head, I'm like Tessa Virtue and Scott Moyer, Yuzu Hanyu kind of recently, but definitely a lot of people have not become two-time Olympic champions, especially two Olympics in a row. So that is an achievement very few do achieve. Even more achievements people don't achieve very often: a four-time world champion and a six-time European champion. Obviously, not small at all. Something a lot of people I feel like don't know is that she was actually the first woman to land the triple flip in competition, which is very good, 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 good. Very great for her. Obviously, this was a time where I guess technical ability wasn't like what we know now. People were not throwing down triple axles and quads everywhere. But yeah, Katarina Witt was the first woman to land a triple flip, so we love that for her. And nowadays, she obviously like retired. She stopped skating, I think, until in the 2000s, the early 2000s, in shows and such. But now she's kind of involved here and there in skating, not always kind of involved with skating, but she has kind of have her own charity kind of vibe and work kind of vibe, sports management ish world. Yeah. And yeah, I feel like we don't see her often involved in skating anymore, but she definitely still is very present. And obviously, she is very much a key part of the figure skating world still in its history and everything. Okay, guys. Just to discuss her general career and obviously what we can learn from it. Okay, guys, this is where you know how they say like you're never gonna use anything you learn in school in real life. Like this is one of those exceptions. Okay, so Katarina Witt was born in East Germany, and just to explain some historical context, I did take AP World History, so I am somewhat qualified. I do not know my AP test score yet. I'm hoping for I pass, but so after World War II, forgive me if I'm wrong about any of this. It's been a month. I'm sorry. After World War II, the United States and the Soviet Union decided to split up a lot of Europe because a lot of Europe was kind of under destruction and everything. And they decided to split up a lot of Europe, but they had a lot of arguments over what countries should have free elections, what countries should be more controlled. And so a lot of countries ended up being split or collected together. And Germany was definitely one of those countries. Germany is probably the most prominent example of this. And Germany was split into West Germany and East Germany. West Germany was a lot more democratic, a lot more focused on democracy and voting and capitalism and things like that. And the Soviet Union definitely had a lot more influence on East Germany in terms of socialism and I think a little bit of communism and elections that were not free and fair. And, generally the lifestyle was a lot more controlled over there. The economy was a lot more controlled compared to West Germany, which was a lot more influenced by the United States. But what you gotta know is that West Germany and East Germany were very much split. If you even recall in Berlin, the Berlin Wall ran through the middle of the city, splitting out West and East Germany in the parts of the city. And yeah, that's just some historical context that you need to know. But Katarina Witt is eventually born, 1969, I believe, in East Germany. And so yeah, and her career I feel like does run alongside a lot of historical storylining, if that makes sense as well. A lot of her career was very much observed by the East German government and making sure she wasn't acting out anyway, that she was, representing her country very well. And I feel like that is something that we have to consider that in figure skating is how figure skating is often influenced by outside things and historical politics and geopolitical influences and whatnot. And I do feel like Henry of It was a good example of that. It was a time of a lot of control, obviously, in East Germany with the government and everything, constantly monitoring everyone and everything, especially if you were an athlete or a very high level, well known person outside of East Germany. In the time it was not very free for a lot of citizens, so even traveling outside the country was very much prohibited unless you had a special reason to. And of course, Katarina Witt was an athlete, and she got that special privilege to travel outside the country. And her career definitely had a lot of influences behind it, lots of control behind it in that way in terms of her athlete life. But I think a lot of things to show that a lot of things to consider is that she still broke free of that in a sense, and she still was able to display her own personality and artistry on the ice despite the kind of political and historical circumstances around her. But anyway, Katarina Witt is born into East Germany, which is kind of important to note, but we will definitely get more into that later. But she eventually gets into sports and specifically figure skating, especially as a child, as many skaters do. And she eventually gets into a skating school and is coached by Jutta Muller. I feel like I'm saying that wrong. If I am, I'm very sorry. But Jutta Muller is her only coach for the rest of her life, which I do feel like I want to put emphasis on this is that when somebody is your coach for like your entire career, I feel like we don't see this often anymore, like especially these days in figure skating, where a lot of people are constantly switching coaches and choreographers and everything and teams and everything. But the fact that Katarina Witt and Jutta Muller had that coach skater relationship or that skater coach relationship, I should say, for Katarina Witt's entire career, I feel like can be so important to the point where I feel like they probably like had that like mother daughter kind of vibe, which I feel like in figure skating especially, is so important to have that constant source of support behind you. And I do feel like that is what kind of led to a lot of Witt's big moments, obviously, is having that support around her, especially again, in considering kind of the East Germany context. If I remember correctly from what I know, her parents and family members and like and friends and everything were not allowed to like travel with her to competitions and see her. And so Jutta Muller and a lot of probably the German team, the sports team, and everything, really did become her secondary family outside of East Germany when they would go travel for competitions and everything. And so definitely a very intense environment, but also one of very close knit relationships that you had to kind of have. You weren't switching coaches constantly, I guess, in Katarina Witt's time, but she had that one coach for her whole career, taught her the jumps, taught her the spins, taught her the compulsory figures, and I guess they probably did have that mother daughter relationship that led to a lot of support and led to a lot of motivation and encouragement, I would say, compared to maybe these days where we have people scared switching coaches constantly, never maybe forming that really close knit relationship with them. But definitely, I think between Katarina Witt and Jutta Muller, they had that very close relationship. But anyway, yeah, Katarina Witt skates. She goes to her first Europeans at the age of 13, which is not, which at the time was, kind of common, but not super common. Back then, the age restrictions were not like a huge thing. You were like, you can go to Europeans at age 13, like that's fine. Like go to the Olympics at age 14, that's probably fine. Not to say that I support that or anything because, age restrictions are a good thing that helps keep athletes healthy. But she does go to her first Europeans at age 13. Does not have a ton of success, like very much in her early career. But then she does eventually have some success in both 1982 and 1983, which are quite important years. She doesn't go to the 1980 Olympics. I believe she is not sent to those, and other skaters are sent to those. But, eventually developing as a skater, becoming around 16, 17 years old in 1982 and 1983 is when she really started to shine and she began winning both European medals and world medals. But the Olympics would definitely be her real stage for sure. And that's how we end up in the 1984 Olympics, which are in Sarajevo, which at the time are in Yugoslavia, I believe. Let me search this up because I don't want to mess up. Yeah, it was in Yugoslavia. And so, yeah, Yugoslavia hosted the 1984 Olympics. And let's see. Oh my god, excuse me. But yeah, she ends up winning the gold at the 1984 Olympics, very much momentously. That doesn't make sense. Very much like in a very epic, I think, kind of vibe. There she was third in the compulsory figures, which was, her weakest event throughout her whole career. If you don't know what compulsory figures are, good, because honestly, I don't think they definitely taught important skills, but like honestly, like they're not that fun to watch at all. If anything, But compulsory figures were basically kind of drawing, not drawing, but like carving very intricate patterns and shapes on the ice, kind of display. It was kind of the ultimate display of skating skills and balance and technique, if that makes sense. But nowadays we don't do them because they didn't draw a lot of audience, and yeah. But anyway, Katarina Witt was third in the compulsory figures there, and then she was first in both the short program and the free skate to win first overall. I'm not gonna go over the skating system and the scoring system back then because that was way too complicated. But at the ripe age of 18, she wins her first Olympic title. And I think back then it really was very much playful programs, very much starting to show her artistic personality. These programs are very playful, they're very elegant, they are very curated, if that makes sense. They're very curated to very much appease a certain audience and appeal to the eye. And they're just good programs, they're playful programs to skate to. They weren't, masterpieces or anything, but they were fun to watch. And they, these outfits, this bright pink outfit, and like it was just it's fun. Um skating to this kind of music and skating to this kind of vibe in her free skate it's just pink, it's lighthearted, it's very elegant, and she ends up winning the gold at the 1984 Olympics. Now, something to keep in mind is that the 1984 Olympics were held in Sarajevo, and you guys will. This is important for later. Okay, important for later because that's what I'm saying. Okay, now, between the Olympics, she decides to continue for more time. And I do feel like this is something important to know is that a lot of skaters, I feel like, back then, I don't know, back then, I feel like we're starting to see this a bit more with this kind of current generation skaters. Like, retiring so young is not a thing, you know what I mean? Like, I hope, like, a lot of skaters kinda end up leaving more longevity and having more longevity in their careers. Nowadays, of course, we're seeing skaters like Kara Sakamoto and Amber Glenn leading very long careers, and Katarina Witt did not retire after winning her first Olympic title, at 18. She could have retired probably, but she did not, and she continued to chase kind of her skating and continue to chase her dreams of becoming a very, very well renowned figure skater. I don't know how much of this was due to the political influence at the time. I'm not sure if East Germany like influenced her in that decision or maybe even forced her to continue skating. But they were, she was definitely bringing a lot of success to East Germany. So perhaps that is part of the reason why she continued skating. But either way, between the Olympics, she had very good success in this kind of era of skating as well. I feel like, between 1984 and 1988 was a lot more artistic development from her. She has a very famous West Side Story program at the time, which West Side Story at the time was kind of a novel thing, I feel like. Not novel, it wasn't completely new, but it was still, it was still different from the time for the time, and it was still like, hey, West Side Story is like kind of recent. I feel like it's kind of a little different. Not exactly classical music, but very fun to watch. Um yeah. But then she ends up going to the 1986 Worlds where she loses to Debbie Thomas of the USA. And Debbie Thomas is a skater that we should all kind of watch out for because the Katarina Witt Debbie Thomas rivalry really culminates in 1988. And what happens with Debbie Thomas is that Debbie Thomas ends up winning the 1986 Worlds over Katarina Witt. And, not to say Katarina Witt was not accustomed to losing, but it was definitely a time where she was the dominant reigning force in figure skating, and to kind of be upset by Debbie Thomas at the Worlds, um, was a very key moment in this. And then I believe she states in her website, I think I literally read that that was kind of the moment that she would decide that she would go to the 1988 Olympics to defend her Olympic title. Like she was like, I'm not letting Debbie Thomas take the Olympic title from me. Maybe she thought maybe that she was going to retire after 1986 or maybe before the next Olympics, but after losing to Debbie Thomas in 1986, she decides that she would go and try to defend her Olympic title. So yeah, but then she wins the 1987 Worlds, I believe, and that's really great for her. Over Debbie Thomas, which kind of more rivalry vibes for that. And yeah, what happens is at The 1980 Olympics is the 1988 Olympics is really the culmination, the pinnacle, the peak of the Katarina Witt versus Debbie Thomas kind of drama, which I do feel like maybe was driven by a little bit political force. Debbie Thomas, an American from the USA, Katarina Witt was from East Germany. East Germany is like socialist. They're bad. The USA is like, yes, capitalism. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that was kind of maybe the vibe at the time. And kind of the tension at the time, the East versus West kind of drama was definitely something very big politically at the time. And perhaps that did kind of play into sports. Obviously, I think a big movement is separating sports and politics for sure. But you have to, you can't, I don't think you can deny that a lot of big sports rivalries in the past have been due to political rivalries, if that makes sense. Um, kind of being kind of a main influence between these two countries. Like, we don't want to like be rivals with them in politically wise. We don't wanna be enemies with them politically. And so how we express that is kind of being enemies with them in sports. And I feel like that is kind of the main kind of thing. But anyway, they end up going, both of them, Debbie Thomas and Katarina Witt, to the 1980 Olympics, where, I do think defending an Olympic title, as we say, defending any title is probably the hardest thing to do in all of figure skating. But defending an Olympic title is definitely very difficult because obviously the Olympics are 4 years apart. And so, defending your Olympic title from 4 years ago and the 4 years you have time to grow physically, mentally as a skater is definitely difficult to do defending that Olympic title, especially with new skaters coming up. Debbie Thomas was not at the 1984 Olympics for Katarina to go against, but here we are at the 1980 Olympics, and Katarina Witt is attempting to defend her Olympic title in Calgary, in Canada. And the big drama of this whole situation is what I think is very much one of the most famous figure skating competitions in all of figure skating history, and that is the Battle of the Carmens. Because both Katarina Witt and Debbie Thomas decide to skate to Carmen, and that's how we get this whole war horse situation. We joke about Carmen, we laugh about Carmen, kind of because this whole dramatic situation happened in 1988 where both of the top skaters skate to Carmen. The drama, the intrigue, it was everything. It was everything. I do feel like these are the most famous performances of not Debbie Thomas, of Katarina Witt's whole career, the most iconic for sure. Her show program is set to kind of showgirl music, if that makes sense. At the time, this was a very, very controversial program because of the outfit that Katarina Witt wore. It was considered a little too theatrical and a little too revealing for the time, and a lot of judges did not like that. A lot of newspapers did not like that. A lot of people thought it was, a move to kind of draw some criticism, but also draw some approval, and it was a whole mess. It was very much controversial, and so from that we got kind of the Katarina rule, if that makes sense, of kind of wearing clothes that are a little bit more professional and not too theatrical, as they say. I think the wording in the ISU book is like garish. I think not too garish, which is really fancy, but yeah, something important to note. But Katarina Witt eventually does regain her Olympic title. Debbie Thomas, unfortunately, definitely had the ability to win her Olympic title back, but she just makes too many technical mistakes to win the Olympic title. Katarina Witt, however, delivers a very, very enchanting performance to Carmen. I do believe that this Carmen performance was the ultimate showing to the world of what a great actress she was, how much power that she could kind of exude in her skating. This is a program of passion, and this is a program of theatrics, and this is a program of power, and you really do feel that in this skating. She is using every turn of the ice that she can. She's using every facial expression that she can. She's showing the world that she is Carmen in a way. And I do really like the attention to detail and everything. The personality of her skating is so well done. It's so well refined. It's so not Katarina Witt and so Carmen. It's really, absorbing the character into her own body. So much of the vibe of it, so much of the fast skating, so much of the tragedy, so much of the smiling and the posing. And I do feel like it is something that we kind of don't see anymore. And it's one of those performances that I could probably watch over and over again without getting bored because there is a new moment to notice every time what is new, what isn't, what is good, what is not. It's just great. It's great to watch. And I love it. Anywho, what was it? What am I doing? Yeah. Anywho, yeah, she wins the 1980 Olympics with a very beautiful performance like Carmen. She dies at the very end of it. It's tragic, the bells tolls and everything. But she wakes back up because yeah, she won her Olympic title back. And yeah, that's the 1988 Olympics for you. So with that, Katarina Witt, she ends up going to 1988 Worlds. She wins 1988 Worlds as well. And, great for her. Her career is kind of at an end now. Her career is at an end. And between the Olympics, she kind of takes that retirement and she ends up doing a lot of ice shows and touring, which, is very common even now. A lot of skiers who retire still remain in the sport through ice shows and touring. Now, something great to know is that her, Brian Boitano, and Brian Orser, all three very famous figure skaters at the time, they end up making the very much iconic Carmen on Ice movie. Um, which is obviously Carmen on Ice, meaning the story of Carmen retold through figure skating. Obviously, very unique for the sport of figure skating for a movie to be made about figure skating, or not about figure skating, to incorporate figure skating that way. We have movies that are about figure skating, like I, Tonya and Ice Princess and whatnot. But this is a movie not about figure skating, but that incorporated figure skating into this whole thing. It's the story of Carmen retold on the ice. And so Katarina Witt, Brian Orser, and Brian Boitano end up, um, acting in that movie, and they end up doing really well, and they win an Oscar or something for I don't even remember what it was. It was crazy. It was it was new. It was different for the time. And I do feel like this is a great example and a great time to know about how much fame was different back then in figure skating. Fame back then in figure skating was kind of much different from how we understand fame in figure skating now, because nowadays I feel like it's so much harder to get famous in figure skating. Back then, figure skating was such a big thing. It was such a cool thing to watch, and a lot of these skaters ended up becoming very famous. They ended up going to ice shows. They ended up touring in very big arenas, and they ended up selling out tickets and everything. Even the idea of the Carmen Ice like movie is so like surreal, because I feel like that would never happen again in figure skating, to have a movie that just incorporated figure skating into it. And so, that was, it was a different time for sure, different time, different perception of fame, different ways that skiers could get famous from figure skating. And, that is just not possible, I feel like these days, unfortunately, that we don't have movies that just incorporate figure skating, that just hire the top skiers in the world to act in a movie about figure skating, or that incorporates so much figure skating. But back then, in Katarina Witt's time period, she was very much famous for not only winning her Olympic titles, but being on these ice shows and touring and being in this very iconic movie. That is just it's much different from it is today, and maybe in an unfortunate way that skiers just don't get that automatic popularity these days as they did, way back when, for sure. Now, 1988 was kind of supposed to be it. Like Katarina Witt, she won 2 Olympic gold medals. She had won 4 world titles. She had won 6 European titles. Like, what more could you ask from a career in figure skating? And it was kind of supposed to be a good retirement. She was supposed to just skate in shows and tours for as long as she could, or as long as she wanted to, and, earn success and money in that way. But a lot of skaters at the time end up coming back to competitive figure skating due to a loophole at the time. The ISU let a lot of skaters who had gone amateur, who had gone, to tour, no, who had gone professional to go tour and do ice shows and everything. They let a lot of those skaters come back to competitive figure skating. I forget exactly why this was a thing. I don't know if it was to increase popularity in the sport again, kind of regain it, but I don't think it was suffering at that time, so I have no idea exactly why we did this. But the ISU, because the ISU makes a lot of strange decisions, and yet they still do today. The ISU says that, yeah, if you're a professional figure skater, you can come back to figure skating right now with this loophole rule. And a lot of skaters, including Katarina Witt, as we're talking about, decide to come back here. A lot of these skaters include Ryan Boitano as well. Tor Valentine even come back to figure skating, and they attempt to regain popularity, and they attempt to get a spot back on their Olympic team to attend the 1994 Olympics. Now, something important to note in the background context of things for history reasons, everything. Again, I'm using my knowledge from AP World. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Between the 1988 Olympics and the 1994 Olympics, lots of things happened in the world, specifically in Europe and the East West divide. Germany becomes unified again. The Soviet Union falls and dissolves into many countries like Russia and Yugoslavia. And no, Yugoslavia? I don't think, yeah, Yugoslavia is one of them. Russia is one of them. Many countries in Eastern European region become dissolved, the Soviet Union dissolves, and they becomes those countries. The Berlin Wall falls, and Germany ends up being unified again. So instead of having West Germany and East Germany, it is just Germany. And so Germans are just Germans. They're no longer just East Germans and West Germans, but they're Germans. And that is very important to know because Katarina Witt comes back competing not just for East Germany, but for Germany as a whole. Um, and I think Katarina Witt, her goal in coming back at, very much, 10 years after her first Olympic title and, 6 years after her second Olympic title was to kind of come back and prove what she could do. Now, remember and recall when I told you to remember that the 1984 Olympics were in Sarajevo. In Sarajevo in the year 1993, 1994, there was kind of a civil war happening at the time. And, it was a very tragic time for a lot of people. And it was a very tragic time for a lot of people, and what ended up occurring was, or during the Bosnian War, was a lot of fighting and a lot of death and everything. And kind of it kind of wanted to show a message to the people of Sarajevo and the people of Yugoslavia, um, and kind of to show everything that that everything kind of she kind of wanted to send a message of peace, I think, and a message of solidarity, of course, to these people. Want to show a message of tribute to the people that she skated for 10 years previously, and you know wanted to show tribute to them. And quite possibly, I feel like these are her best programs. In my very subjective opinion, these are her best programs. Her show program is set to Robin Hood. It's very elegant, it's fun, it's different because it's not, she's wearing pants, okay? Like, that's why it's cool. She's wearing pants. It's not a skirt, it's not a dress, she's wearing pants. Again, very controversial because she's wearing pants, and that's very controversial at the time, but who actually cares? And it's a very fun, it's a good program. She ends up sixth in the short program. She ends up becoming the very last skater to skate at these Olympics. And her free skate is set to Where Have All the Flowers Gone by Pete Seeger. And it is a tribute to the people of Sarajevo and the Bosnian War, and to show tribute to those people. um, Such an underrated program. It's crazy. It's a beautiful program, and the message that it shows is just so stunning. And to me, in my opinion, I honestly believe it's better than her Carmen because it's so much. It's full of pure and raw emotion. It isn't made for the cameras. It isn't made to act or something for the judges. This is a real raw program, and in a message to the people of Sarajevo and the people of the world to show solidarity and to kind of spread a message of hope and light in such a terrible, difficult time. To show this at the Olympics, obviously on one of the biggest stages in the world. I think it really does show kind of the power of figure skating in a way. Like figure skating, maybe today, again, kind of lessened in popularity. So maybe it is a little bit more difficult. But today it is something that can spread so much joy and love still to a lot of people in times of tragedy. Can spread such a beautiful message. And I think Katarina Witt's performance is one of the best examples of that, from earlier periods of time. And her 1994 free skate, I think, is in a lot of people's hearts, including mine. She eventually places seventh at the Olympics, so yeah, she did go from first, and then seventh at her third and final Olympics. But the Olympic podium or a gold medal was probably not in her. It was probably not a huge goal. Instead of compared to showing this message. And the podium is eventually Oksana Bayul of Ukraine in first, Nancy Kerrigan in second of USA, and third is Chen Li from China. But Katarina Witt is not on that podium. But that's okay because she wins in her program for sure for me and a lot of people, and she showed this beautiful message to the world. And then she goes back into retirement after that because yeah, but she skated in a lot of shows and professional events for a while. Then she retired from touring in the 2000s, and now she does like a million and one things, including commentating for figure skating. Her very infamous 2014 Olympic commentary because she was mad that Adelina Sonikova won over Yuna Kim is very iconic in figure skating. And it's kind of funny to rewatch, and she's just very shocked about everything. But what can we learn from Katarina Witt's story? I do think that this is the most important section of this episode. I think we have to like realize that she had a lot of hard work going on, especially a lot of appreciation for hard work, knowing that her situation, especially with the East Germany whole thing and the political situation, and how, she was having a lot of freedom that a lot of people in East Germany didn't have. She had to work to get that freedom. She had to work for to be able to travel and to be able to compete abroad, and she had to compete very well to compete abroad as well. And then even her comeback in 1994, it's not easy to make a comeback 6 years away, competitive skating from the sport, I do think is very much unprecedented. We're not even seeing that even today. Being away from the sport for 6 years, not skating very much, competitive wise, but coming back because you love the sport and you want to you want to spread a message to the world. I feel like it's one of the most like humanistic things ever is coming back and spending some time in your career, to the sport that you love and to spread a message to people that you love and to have that hard work to work that way up again and to make it and to qualify for the Olympics is really amazing. Um, I think she is a skier who really did love the sport a lot in terms of her competitive career, and I think she understood the impact that figure skating could have on people, especially the 1994 Olympics. Like I said, figure skating can have that impact today. Figure skating has that impact today on me and you and a lot of fans in terms of the message that it can spread and the artistry that it can bring and the emotions that it really does create in us. She didn't let the sport get away from her even after retirement. She still stayed a very present person in the sport and then made that comeback in 1994 and then retired again. And just an icon overall. Really good for her for spreading that joy and that message to figure skating that I think that, a 6 year comeback or 6 year break is like, is whatever. We can still come back, I guess. Yeah. I will say I feel like another thing I want to point out is her artistry. I feel like the amount of artistry and pure emotion Katarina Witt had on the ice is simply amazing and not seen today. The choreography at the time was different. The rules at the time were different. I totally understand that. There were less jumping, such a lot less emphasis on the jumping, a lot more emphasis on the artistry side. And I do feel like that kind of amount of artistry that she had, especially when we consider programs like her Carmen program, is not really seen that much today because again, the rules are different. I totally understand that, but just the posing and the emotion and the facial expressions I think were so amazing to see at the time, and I wish we could see that today. And I feel like a lot of I really do hope that we kind of meet in the middle one of these days and have that perfect marriage, if that's possible, that we can both be artistic and match technical standards of the time. But of course at the time back then they were maybe not as demanding as they are today with so many requirements and time requirements, everything. But I wish we had a scare that was kind of as theatrical and campy as Katarina Witt and her Carmen. Because again, that program had a huge impact on the figure skating world. It's definitely iconic. The everything from the posing in the middle to dying at the very end of it, laying down on the ice, it's just so like different from what we would see today. There was a huge commitment to a character and a story in that program, and a lot of her programs, like the West Side Story program, and the ability to spread a social message, a beautiful social message, like we saw in her "Where Have All the Flowers Gone" program. I do think it's something that we don't have maybe as much today. We have very beautiful programs and beautiful skaters today, like Jason Brown, obviously, and Dennis Valcias, and so many skaters that can still spread a very beautiful message. But it was like at the time it was like different. It was like stories. Let's tell stories. Let's have characters. Let's be theatrical on the ice. And I feel like Katarina Witt is a perfect example of that kind of time period of her skating. So yeah, that is kind of all for this week's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to kind of the story of Katarina Witt, my analysis of it, and what we can learn from it today in terms of how skiers can learn from it, how we can be more artistic, and how we can spread messages, and how we can have a really deep devotion for this sport that I feel like is so rare to find, and that Katarina Witt really did have for this sport. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that whole episode. My throat is gonna die. Next week I probably will have a video essay episode. I'm not sure. Grand Prix assignments did literally come out today, so it might be Grand Prix assignments next week. I have no idea. I have no idea how I want to split up Grand Prix assignment analysis. But yeah, I will probably maybe I'll do two separate episodes for Grand Prix assignments, and then I will do video essay episode after that. I'm not too sure. I feel like this one was kind of a video essay, so not too sure, but you guys will hear it when you hear it. I will make up my mind because I'm so indecisive. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed very much this episode of the Teen Talk Skating Podcast. My name is Angel. I hope you enjoyed my very long rant about Katarina Witt and her whole entire career and everything that we can learn from it. Next week, I will probably talk about Grand Prix. And yeah, I hope you guys have an amazing week. See you next week or hear from me next week. I don't know. And bye bye.